Welcome to Quest, where we discuss and dissect culture directly from the West Coast.
Join us in our quest for knowledge and understanding. Let's see where it takes us today.
Now, let's begin. Yes. All right, cool. We have it correct. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Fantastic. All right. So you were telling me, and then let me actually introduce you a little bit further. You used to work on Star Trek: The Next Generation back in the 1980s. Correct, Wendel?
Yeah. 80s, 90s. Well, Star Trek Next Gen, Deep Space Nine, and Voyager.
Oh, wow. So around what time? Because you said you were on a YouTube channel previous, and you were saying it was Moda, or excuse me, I forgot the name already.
Propology 101.
Propology 101.
Yeah.
And you had previously worked with this gentleman in the past, and now he has a YouTube channel. That's correct?
Yep.
And you were talking about how you started working and what it was like working on the set of Star Trek and things like that, correct?
Yeah. Well, it wasn't really, how can I put it? Most of the work was done in a shop. Well, the company I worked for was called Proper Effects. And we were one of the vendors that the prop master used to build props for the show.
So it was like one of the manufacturers that produced the stuff.
Yeah. And what happened was that basically once a week we'd get a drawing or a series of drawings and told this is what we need for this episode. We generally had about a week to build the props, whatever they were. And we'd take the drawings and use whatever materials we had available and build whatever was requested.
That's awesome. What was the experience like of getting into a job space like that, or what was the world like at that time?
Oh,
Did you just fall into that?
Sort of, yes and no. What was interesting about, first of all, I got to say, getting into props was actually a hobby.
Okay.
I decided I wanted to be at work in the movie industry after getting laid off from Xerox. This is like late 90s. Early 90s, late 80s.
Okay, so it's like 89-ish, like from around that time.
93, 94 actually is when it was. Had to think about it. Yeah. So I got in. Look, you've probably heard about all these Star Trek and Star Wars conventions, that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
That's how I got in.
Oh wow.
Basically through a friend of a friend. And the thing about most jobs, especially in Hollywood, you get into them through the people that you know. So I had a friend of a friend who was a foreman at a prop shop. I'd gone to this it's actually a Doctor Who convention, but this buddy that invited me did a sci-fi version of Hollywood Squares. In that it was both it was people playing science fiction and real science characters. So, I mean, we had a guy that played Carl Sagan. We had people that played, Jeannie from I Dream of Jeannie. And I was with a group that was playing an away team from Star Trek. Mm. And I was doing Geordi LaForge.
Of course. Naturally. I love Forge.
Yeah. So I mean, I had a costume I made. I had a visor that I made.
That's awesome.
And one of the guys was getting made up in the lobby as part of a makeup demonstration. He was playing Worf, and this was the once removed friend. His name was Chris. So Chris is making this guy up as Worf. And we started talking, and he asked me where I got my uniform from. Well, I made it. Oh, yeah. Where'd you get the visor from? Made that too. Okay. So go through the show. I meet this guy later on out in the park, out in the parking lot, and we start talking, and he was asking how I'd done this. Like this is this is what I do for fun. This is my hobby. I build stuff, build models, and I asked him about building props and how he got into it. So at the end of the conversation, he goes, "Well, hey, if there's ever anything you need, let me know." And I'm like, "Well, I need a job."
That is something to be needed.
Because I'd been out of work for like at that time like 3 years.
And you had applicable skills to do something that would be pretty cool.
Yeah. I mean, because I actually went to school because when I decided I wanted to work in the motion picture industry, I actually went to school for video technology.
Oh, wow.
Thinking that was the way to get in. Never thinking I was going to get in at a fan convention. So I tell the guy, "Yeah, I need a job." And he's like, "Okay." He hands me his card. Says, "Come to my shop on Tuesday."
Oh, wow. That's serendipitous. That's amazing.
Yeah, it was. I mean, so this is on a Saturday. So I rush home. I managed to find pictures of some of the models I had built, put it all together in a folder, and took it with me and showed him the stuff I had done. Talked about how I did it, and a couple of weeks later he called. Said, "Yeah, come on down. We got some work for you."
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I've been doing it ever since.
Yeah, how did man, where do I begin? In terms of dressing up as the character, I'll start there because I think for people that are my age, they might relate to that a little bit more. Or at least people that I know, they will. Cosplay, basically. Yeah, the creating of these characters that are really important to you. I know for a fact, for me, LaForge was somebody I immediately gravitated towards just because I knew LeVar Burton as like somebody that I thought was really cool. But I imagine watching him in Star Trek Next Generation had to be amazing in and of itself. Oh, yeah.
I mean, keep in mind, up until that time, the only thing LeVar Burton was known for was Kunta Kinte in Roots.
Oh, my goodness, yeah.
That was the first time I saw him. That was in the late 70s.
Yeah, man. Oh, my goodness.
So I was excited to see him, in that role.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's especially when the context of what's going on right now.
Yeah.
It was always amazing when you saw, Black or African American, whatever we are this week. It was always fun to see an African American in a role that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
As opposed, not playing a maid or a drug dealer, playing somebody that was like, yeah, this is someone I'd like to be like.
Mm-hmm. Educated, intelligent, solves problems, part of the team, contributes, and also has something to say for himself.
Yeah, so obviously the most famous person like that is Nichelle Nichols.
Oh.
Who I had a horrific crush on when I was a kid.
And she's from the original series, correct?
Correct.
And for to jog my memory, because I haven't watched the original series, I became a huge fan of the Next Generation just because there was more content to watch. And then the 60s were kind of difficult for me to rewatch. But she's she's the main character in the original series that the black woman that was like this. Who was she played by? I don't remember.
Nichelle Nichols.
What was her character's name?
Lieutenant Uhura. Lieutenant Uhura.
That's what I'm trying to remember. I mixed them up.
Yeah, she always sat behind Captain Kirk.
She was one of the main, and she did linguistics as well, correct?
Yeah, well, that's what was interesting. In the J.J. Abrams version of Star Trek, they kind of expanded her role a little bit, or they expanded the character's background. So yeah, in fact, the actress played that was Zoe Saldana.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they expanded her role so that she is a linguist. If she didn't speak the language, she could figure it out. I mean, this was originally the way they played the role was she was just kind of a almost like a receptionist. But later years, they expanded the role, so it's like, okay, this is someone who is highly educated, an expert in her field.
Like in the further movies and stuff like that. I think of the movies, the Star Trek movies I've seen, I think are Star Trek The Wrath of Khan and I think Star Trek 2. Those are the only two like of the original ones.
Yeah, well, there's also the motion picture. The first one was called Star Trek: The Motion Picture.
I don't think I have seen that one though.
Yeah, people have varying opinions about it. It was what was supposed to be happening. They were going to reboot the TV series, and instead, we got made into a motion picture. So that's the short of that. Best version is the director's cut.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind and for the future. I have my Blade Runner director's cut right behind me. So when the opportunity presents itself, I'll snag it. In terms of seeing like black characters in films and stuff like that, what were some of your favorites outside of Star Trek, and then also in general for
wow! Now I got. Well, they weren't all necessarily sci-fi characters, and I don't care what they say about them now, but I always liked Bill Cosby.
Oh yeah, well that's just an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, I mean it was so sad to see him and a few other people, but they were always my favorites. Then of course, well, and this goes back to Star Trek, there was always Avery Brooks, Captain Sisko.
Yeah. Oh wow!
Now him, I know personally.
Really?
Yes, I actually know Avery Brooks.
How'd you come across him?
I made a prop that he had to wear.
Oh, so you were meeting him personally. So this is back on the job again. So you actually oh my goodness.
Yes. So I actually had to fit him for a prop, and that's where we started getting. We got acquainted. Oh, it was him. Oh shoot! You probably haven't heard of this actor. His name is William Marshall, and once again he played Dr. Daystrom on the original series.
Oh man, I don't think the name sounds familiar.
Well, here Google. This is old. Google a movie called Blackula.
Blackula. Okay, I've definitely heard that title before.
Well, he played Blackula.
Oh my goodness.
And the very first movie I worked on, I met him.
And which movie was that?
Oh, it was a movie called The Sorceress. It was kind of it's what they call a femme fatale movie. Basically, one of the movies in from the 80s to about the early 2000s, R-rated films are kind of like soft porn. It wasn't porn, but that's essentially what it was. Because
the movie system wasn't rated the same way it is now.
Correct. and plus, people, I mean, a lot of people really didn't want to do it. I mean, the internet has changed all that, but you wanted to do stuff that people, that would appeal to the lowest common denominator. So this is a real low budget film, and and by the time I met William Marshall, he's well into his 80s. So, and so he was just glad for the work.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, really nice guy. So there's him, Michael Dorn who played Worf.
Yeah, I'm familiar with him for sure.
Yeah, once again, I met a good number of the characters on the show.
That's awesome.
I mean, it was a lot of fun. So, them, Roxanne Dawson played Lieutenant Torres on Voyager.
I'm not as familiar with Voyager. The characters that you got to meet in terms of these shows, was it in terms of your company got like contracted with them for the whole series, where you were exclusively making their stuff?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. Obviously, the shop I worked for made props for several shows, and the prop masters had the option to go wherever they wanted to have their props made.
Oh, okay.
but we were what was happening with Star Trek, especially with Next Generation. This is how the shop I worked for got involved. They had two prop masters, and Joe Longo and Alan Sims, and these guys would tag team each of the shows. So Alan Sims would do props on one episode of Next Gen, and Joe Longo would do props on a different episode, and they just go back and forth like that. And if you read the credits, you'll see it. So when they did, Voyager, well, first when they did Deep Space Nine, Next Generation was still in production.
Yeah, Deep Space Nine is the one where it takes place on like a space, like a port, basically, correct?
Space station, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. It was. Keep in mind the name of the station, and of course the show was very Earth-centric in that, it's deep space.
It's far away from where you're from.
It's far away from Earth. One of the funny lines I loved in that show was one of the guy who played the Doctor was on about he's doing frontier medicine. He's saying this to the person whose planet the station is orbiting, and this person is like, listening to talking about the frontier, and she's like, dude, this is my home.
This is not the middle of nowhere. I know exactly where I am.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like this is deep for you, but it's relative.
This is home. Yeah, this is home.
You're the alien here.
Yeah. So as we're getting farther and farther off the track, but anyways, so not only when I first started in the company, I was working in the mold room, just making castings of all these things. Like things like phasers, or more commonly the comm badges that everyone wore made out of cast plastic. So I was making those kinds of things.
So you just repeat order. They want a couple of them. They all made them, and then the whole staff and crew was able to be satisfied with the products that you were producing.
Yeah. Yeah, but see, I also got and I consider it a privilege, I got to go on set and deliver the stuff.
Oh, that's super cool. So you had all the toys, and you got to bring them to the the phasers and the weapons.
Yep.
Those what are the Klingon weapons called? The giant bows. That
it's a batlith.
A batlith. What?
It's not a bow. It's a sword.
Oh, it's a sword.
Yeah.
Okay, so they don't. Those are made out of metal, correct?
Yeah. Yes. Okay. There are two kinds of props.
All right. Yeah.
Hero and stunt. Well, actually, three: hero, stunt, and background.
Okay.
A stunt prop is typically made out of rubber, and that's something that's going to get thrown or tossed or swung or something like that.
Okay.
And then a hero prop will usually be made something closer to what the actual thing would be made out of. So, and the way to you have to look carefully, because the way to tell the difference, especially at least with a batlith, if you see one that's really, really shiny, it's a hero. But if you see two characters swinging them around, they're made out of rubber.
That makes
that's
sense.
So the actors don't get hurt.
Exactly. It's for safety reasons, clearly.
Yeah. So anytime, or even like a police show, if you see someone holding a gun, chances are it's probably plastic, or at least if it isn't, it's it shoots blanks. But if you see someone throw it, or you see someone get hit with it, it's made out of rubber. So, and the rubber, so that A, the actors don't get hurt, and B, so the thing doesn't get severely damaged. Because I have actually had in Star Trek, they actually used to take some of the hard plastic props and throw them and drop them, and part of my job was fixing them after they got broken.
Yeah, because who better than you to fix the things that they broke.
Right. And sometimes it was like I'd get a broken one, and sometimes it was easier to just make a new one than it was to fix the broken one.
Yeah.
And then I'd take the broken one home.
Yeah. Exactly. It's like, let me. I could probably put this back together and hold on to it.
I didn't. Most of the time I didn't put it back together.
Oh, really?
Because it's kind of like it's collectible. Because how can I prove this is used on set? It's broken.
It wasn't supposed to be like this to begin with.
Right. This is how I got it out of the prop master's hands. Mm-hmm. He handed me a broken prop. I made him a new one.
That's awesome.
It depended, but sometimes I'd fix them. It depended.
Sure.
If we were in a big hurry, I'd fix it.
Sure.
But a lot of times it was easier to just make another one because it came out better. It was actually less work.
Yeah. Sometimes it doesn't have to be fixed, but yeah.
Right.
In terms of just the work environment, were there a lot of other people that had the skills that you did in order to do that?
Oh yeah.
What do a lot of those people end up doing in terms of like latching onto work and trying to do stuff? Do a lot of people make props anymore, or what is that like today?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, you probably heard what you call makers, people who make stuff. That's what a lot of these guys do. I mean, most of the people I met in the business were like me. They were fans. They liked all these different shows. They liked movies. They liked making stuff, and that's how they got into it. Now, when the movie industry began to migrate out of California, a lot of these guys went into related fields. I mean, fields that use the same skill set, but weren't necessarily the same thing. So a lot of the guys I know got into making toy prototypes.
Oh, yeah. I can see that being very similar skill set.
Yeah. Oh, it's almost identical.
Yeah.
In fact, I was doing toy prototypes for a while.
Oh.
Yeah. Now what I do are trade show props, which are basically, if I were in the movie industry, it would be doing set pieces.
So large put together like props essentially.
Yeah.
That wouldn't be easily done at home.
It'd be very difficult to do at home unless you're like remodeling your bathroom or something like that.
Yeah, and you have all the space and the stuff to do it with.
Yeah, like I said, all similar skill sets.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, those skill sets could even cross over into architecture and construction as well.
Oh yeah,
without a doubt. In terms of what it was like back in the, let's say the 90s, in terms of these shows coming back to prominence, did you notice that there was a big push for like corporations like CBS to push these shows to be as profitable as possible?
At the time, I can't say I noticed because I was too busy, working.
True.
It was, how can I put this? All right, keep in mind that with the original Star Trek, it only went 3 seasons. Mm-hmm. If NBC had its way, it only would have gone 2 seasons.
CBS?
No, NBC.
Oh,
That's
really?
who had it originally. Yeah,
oh,
actually,
I didn't know that.
Okay, the original studio that filmed Star Trek was Desilu, which was a studio that did I Love Lucy.
Oh, wow.
In fact, Lucille Ball was one of the people who was responsible for Star Trek.
Really?
Yes. Desilu Studios was bought out by Paramount.
Okay.
So, even though it was filmed on the same stages, the company bought it out and renamed the studio Paramount Studios, and they continued on the show. NBC was the studio that was airing Star Trek in the 60s.
Wow.
Which is why I find it funny because CBS had their own sci-fi show, Lost in Space.
Oh, wow! I've never actually seen an episode of that. I've just heard about it before. But I've definitely heard about like Star Trek, and I know I associate Star Trek with CBS now, especially with the Picard show that they have on their exclusive.
Yeah, which I loved that show. All these studios have been changing hands over the years.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know who CBS bought, because Paramount had their own network for a minute, and that's one of the reasons why Next Gen got on the air, because the way they did it, it was straight to syndication, and then there were certain local stations that aired their shows. So in Los Angeles, it was Channel 13.
Yeah.
This is before the days of cable and satellite TVs.
A whole nother world of communication networks and how that works.
Yeah.
Dang. In terms of TV, like what kind of stuff were you watching? What kind of stuff were you interested in terms of movies and television around that time as well?
Oh, like I said, whatever sci-fi was on. So we got Star Trek. There's Knight Rider, Street Hawk, which is similar to Knight Rider. A show called Salvage One. The Golden Age was after Star Wars hit, and everyone wanted to do their version of Star Wars.
Absolutely. And you were definitely willing to see it and check it out, because if it was there, you wanted to check it out anyway.
Right, so that's where we got Battlestar Galactica. Buck Rogers of the 25th Century, which was actually a remake of the serial shows done in like the 50s, I think. 40s or 50s. I mean, the 90s, that for me, that was the golden age of science fiction. So it had the remake of Battlestar Galactica, Stargate.
Okay, I've only heard of these shows, both of them. I've only heard of them. I have not watched them yet.
Well, there's Stargate the movie, and then Stargate SG-1, the TV series based on the movie.
Oh wow!
Stargate SG-1 was one of the longest science fiction shows running. I mean, continuously.
Wow. How many seasons was that for?
10.
Oh, wow. That's a very long time.
10 seasons of SG-1 and 2 spin-off shows, Stargate Atlantis and Stargate Universe.
And what time of the week would these shows come on? Like, I imagine if they had them, what kind of program?
Friday night.
Oh, wow.
And by this time I had cable. Friday night, Sci-Fi Friday. So it was Battlestar Galactica, Stargate, Babylon 5.
Oh wow.
And of course, I think early in the day it was Star Trek. Oh God, I can't remember. There's a couple others, but I had basically on a Friday I had 6 solid hours of sci-fi shows.
Dang, that's amazing. So.
Oh yeah. And I worked on some of them.
That's actually even cooler. Oh man. Had it always been the Friday night activity in terms of No? When did it become like a Friday night thing where it was regularly like there was that much content for you to see?
Like I said, this was mid 90s, early 2000s. I couldn't afford to watch cable until I guess about 2003. No, wait. What channel? I'm trying to think. What channel did they come on? Because I think it might have been on Fox.
Oh, wow.
But at some point when I got cable, it was on the Sci-Fi Network. So most.
Yeah, that was where like you could definitely get all the stuff you had, because the whole point of the cable package was to like put all that kind of programming in one place.
Yeah, in fact, that's when they actually spelled it Sci-Fi, SCI-FI, as opposed to now, which is SYFY.
Yeah.
During that time, the Sci-Fi Network was strictly science fiction shows.
That's something else. That reminds me of like how YouTube is today, where you find these like rabbit holes on YouTube where you can just go down the same topic for long periods of time. The only difference between that and now is that at that time you had to be at a certain time of day to watch that kind of content. But with YouTube, you can do it at any moment in time.
Yeah, in fact, one of the things I found was that someone did, I guess, a fan-based series. It was their remake of the original Star Trek.
On
Basically
YouTube?
picking up, yes.
Oh,
Basically,
wow.
it picked up
Oh my goodness.
where the original series ended.
Oh man, is it? Do they try to keep it to canon of the actual timeline, or do they just do their own
Yeah.
thing?
Yeah,
Oh,
I mean
wow.
they don't have the same actors, of course. I mean, they've got completely different actors. But what amazed me is that all of the sets, the costumes, the props, everything, they copied down to the last nut and bolt.
That's amazing. The fact that people can have that dedication.
Yeah. And some of the people who worked on that show were actually people who worked on Next Generation. Because a lot of those people were fans of the original show.
Of course, naturally. Oh my goodness, how did they get funded to do such a project? Was it like a crowdfunded of?
I have no idea.
Oh my goodness.
I have no idea.
That's so amazing.
I just discovered it by accident one day watching YouTube videos, and I'm like, and when I turned it on, I went, yeah, this isn't going to be that good, and it was really good.
Oh my goodness, that makes me really consider YouTube. How do you feel about YouTube as a place for people to put up like their own versions of content and stuff like that?
I think it's amazing. I mean, okay, the truth of the matter is, when cable became prominent, one of the things that cable channels are required to do is to let people in the community come to the studios and do content. In fact, when I was taking video back in '92, I was able to go to trying to think of the name of the cable company. It'll come to me, but this particular studio was in Compton, and I was able to. Oh, they had another studio that was in Inglewood. Starts with a C. I will think of it sooner or later.
Would I've heard of it before or no?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe.
I'll keep thinking, but I don't know.
But because I know they've been bought and sold a couple of times and changed the name. But suffice it to say that there were several shows that were done just by guys like you and me who just like you're doing this podcast now. You could go to the studio, pitch a show, and if they had a spot, they'd say, okay, they would let you use the studio, let you use the cameras, the editing facility, whatever, to do your content. And then they would air it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then they would air it.
That's interesting.
So I get that. So that's one of the ways that's one of the venues I had available to me to learn from. So with YouTube, it's the same thing, only now, and this is one of the reasons that television has changed so much. Now, you don't have to rent studios. You can film anywhere, under almost any condition, and dang it, you can do it with your cell phone.
Yeah, and as a matter of fact, most people do. I can imagine the amount of stuff that's just uploaded directly from people's phones.
Yeah, and the quality is the quality of a cell phone is almost just as good as $100,000 video camera.
Yeah, because the technology is packed in so tightly that it's all accessible.
Yeah, so anyone can do it. Anyone who wants, who's willing to take the time, and then a lot of these people have Patreons, so it's like, yeah, sponsor my show.
Yeah.
If you like me, sponsor me.
The crowd-funded means that you're completely independent, because if you have a fair base of followers to make you concrete, then you could do what you want.
Yeah. So it's for the viewing public is a godsend. Now for the professional, maybe. Because now, all of a sudden,
profitable.
Yeah. Well, okay. Like, I'll give you an example. And we're kind of jumping around topics here, but
I don't
CGI.
mind at all. That's the best part.
Okay. Let's take CGI, for example. CGI is a godsend for the viewing public. You can see stuff that you could never have seen before. or if you saw it, it would have looked so fake. You would have had a hard time immersing yourself in the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
The problem was, okay, but the thing was, okay, say the movie The Gladiator.
Mm-hmm.
Gladiator was, a lot of the sets were done in CGI. You couldn't tell.
I was about to say I haven't seen the movie recently enough to even remember.
Well, or all right, here's a better one: Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
The last few. Most of those sets were CGI.
Yeah, absolutely.
And and they look so good. I mean, even knowing what CGI looks like, when I saw them, we're talking about Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones,
Yeah.
and the first three, then the last three. It didn't even occur to me they were CGI until someone said it. Then I looked at it again and it was like, oh, that is CGI. Now I can see it. So here's the point.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, go.
But here's the point. Back in from 77 till the mid 2000s, you had to hire a crew of 300 people to build those sets. Now you hire a crew of 20 people to build it in a computer. And then you match move it with software. So the only thing that gets built are things like stairs, maybe, or a box to represent a tabletop, so that you could actually take a hand prop and put it down, and to give the set more realism. In fact, the first CD-ROM game I worked on had a CGI background. It was done in CGI, and you're on a set that's all fluorescent green. That's all there is.
Yeah, and it's just people walking around with a bunch of stuff in the background.
Yep.
And
there's nothing.
Yeah.
There's nothing in the background. Just the floors are fluorescent green. The walls fluorescent green. If there's a chair, it's fluorescent green. If there's a control panel, it's just a 2x4 with a board across it, so their fingers has something to hit.
Yep.
And then you see the game, and it's like, oh, there's a control panel. And as an aside, that's where I got to meet Mark Hamill.
Oh,
better known
really?
as Luke Skywalker.
Wait, how did you meet him?
He was one of the actors on the CD-ROM game. Wing Commander 3 was the name of the game.
Wing Commander 3. I've never heard of that game in my life.
Keep in mind, this is 1994.
Oh wow.
It's a PlayStation game, and if you're interested, Henry, I think I still have that game somewhere.
I don't have a PlayStation, but I do have friends with PlayStations.
I have a PlayStation.
Okay, fantastic.
I think I still have that game. In fact, one of the reasons I bought it because my name is in the credits.
That's reason enough to buy it for sure. Absolutely.
But that was my first, interaction with, virtual reality is working on that game, and so it's just amazing how much that has progressed since then. Because you see the CD-ROM games, like, yeah, okay, you can tell it's a CGI background. Now, it's harder to tell.
Yeah, I remember my first time experiencing, and this was much later in the future, obviously, but the first time I witnessed VR technology. I was at a comic book convention, or as a matter of fact, it was the Silicon Valley Comic Con, and one of the exhibits that they had was this Oculus Rift thing where you got to shoot arrows, and I put on the goggles and I was shooting the arrows, and I was kind of dizzy and trying to figure out how interesting it was, that the fact that my brain was completely tricked into being this other reality.
Yeah.
And that tripped me out.
Yeah, I only experienced that once, and the only reason I was even to experience it, one of the shops I was working at did a display for the LA Auto Show, and it was using the Oculus Rift system, and it was a virtual drive. Basically, it was an advertisement for an Acura NSX. So we built a stand with a steering wheel and a seat. And then when you put the goggles on, you actually could reach out, grab a real steering wheel, and then that would control what you saw in the experience.
That's pretty similar.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
But that's where all this stuff is gone. I mean, I'm still waiting for someone to invent a holodeck.
When we get a holodeck, I'm gonna be right there because that sounds fantastic. I'll be able to do everything I want to do. You've seen Community, correct? The show that was on NBC?
No, I haven't.
Oh, okay. So there's a character in that show. His name is Abed, and they have a spare room in their apartment. This is like season 3. But they have a spare room in their apartment that they have, and he turns it into what is essentially a holodeck, where he calls it his imagination room. And he just plays out these scenarios in his head, and he's like tries to make sure things happen the way he wants them to, and then if they don't, then he reorients them otherwise. But it's like this whole idea that you can immerse yourself in a whole world and like experience the life and then come out and learn from the lessons from it. And that's kind of how the holodeck ends up getting used anyway as a story device, is because it's like, all right, well, let's take him off into a medieval adventure in the middle of this sci-fi show.
Yeah. One of the interesting reasons they do that sometimes is a budget. It's a cost cutting measure. Just think about it. Think about it. To do a sci-fi show, everything has to be custom built.
Yes.
The sets, the costumes, the props. So when your budget gets tight, how do you deal with that? There's 2 ways you deal with. The common way you deal with that is what they call a clip show. You know those shows where it's clips from previous episodes. Yeah.
Pay the editor to put together a story with the producer.
Right. Right. But it was for Star Trek. It was kind of a good cost cutting measure because, Captain Picard goes to play Dixon Hill,
Well,
which
you
is
have a
set
world-class
in
actor.
Yeah, but it's set in San Francisco in the 1940s.
Yeah.
Well, guess what? All the props and sets come out of the storeroom at Paramount.
Exactly.
Nothing has to be custom built.
Yeah, you don't have to make anything new, nothing more fantastical.
Right.
It's just all you have is the characters you have from the previous, and then you're telling a story that you want to tell.
Yeah.
That's brilliant in and of itself, really, because the amount of possibilities that you are able to get in terms of telling a story in the show that is like a syndicated, or not even syndicated, but a series show or serial. I think serial is the right word.
Well, serial. No, and Star Trek was syndicated.
Yeah, so in a show where you have a lot of content that you're putting out and you want to have a lot of episodes, then it makes plenty of sense to do something like relatively considered filler, I guess you could say. But like where it's just you go off into a different thing and you try to save some money on the production.
Yeah, and I can't say how much it was cost cutting, but it did make for different shows, and that was fun. I mean, that's one of the difficulties that any show has is keeping its audience engaged.
Absolutely, and if you could tell interesting stories, then why not?
Yeah, sure.
Oh man, there's other stuff that I can think about, like in terms of media content and consumption and stuff like that, outside of television and movies and stuff like that, what kind of content were you consuming? Any what's a good example? Like comic books or radio shows, or what kind of stuff were you outside of those other realms of media were you consuming?
Yeah, books and novels.
Books and novels. What kind of stuff?
Yeah. It was mostly for me, sci-fi and how-to books.
How-to books make plenty of sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, look, back in the days before the internet, my hobby was going to the library and just wandering around. And going into various sections and seeing what was there, seeing what was interesting, and I'd see a book on this topic that interested me, and of course it was, strangely enough, things like how to work with plastic, how to work with various materials, how if I might have found a book on model building, and I'd take those home. So
it was essentially a resource for you to just obtain information and learn more.
Yeah, but it was also, that's how I entertained myself. That was fun for me.
That's
I mean, I didn't have to go to the library. I just liked going. And yeah, of course, I would go through the sci-fi section. I'd find whatever, I'd leaf through, sift through the shelves and find something that looked interesting and take it home and read it. And if I had I do have particular authors that I like, Isaac Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke, David Brin. If I see one of their books, I'd be like, oh, okay, oh, this is a new one. Take that home and read it.
Mm-hmm. Are you familiar with Douglas Adams?
Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy,
Exactly.
baby!
A buddy of mine gave me that book a little while ago, and I picked it back up again recently. I've seen the movie, and I love the movie, and I never actually read the book, and I'm thinking about I might have to read the book now just because it's the movie itself is really fascinating because it forces you to look on a intergalactic level as an individual.
Yeah, he has 2 books, right?
What is this other book?
Thanks for All the Fish. Oh. So Long and Thanks for All the Fish.
I'm gonna have to pick that one up next.
Yeah, so there are 2 books. And I think Thanks for All the Fish is a sequel. Pretty sure it's a sequel to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy.
Thanks for All the Fish.
Yeah, it was in fact it was a line from Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy when they discovered that dolphins were intelligent.
Yeah.
And when they left, they said they said so long and thanks for all the fish. Well,
yes.
that was his second novel.
Oh my goodness! You know what? It probably is a sequel then. But
yeah.
I'm gonna have to. That sounds fantastic. In terms, man, that sci-fi. What about sci-fi really drew you towards the subject in terms of being the thing that drew you the most?
It was being able to live a life that you can't live right now. I mean, okay, look, going to Disneyland. I don't know why. No, actually, I do know why. Keep in mind, in the '60s, you've got the Mercury program, the Apollo program, the Gemini
absolutely.
program. I mean, that's the dawn of space travel.
Mm-hmm.
Which all that coming after, up till that time, the most technological war fought, World War II.
Without question, where they manufactured death.
Yeah, but technology in the late '50s and the early '60s was exploding at the time. I mean, things were developing like by leaps and bounds, and it was just fun watching all that stuff happen. And I mean, look, I tell people right now, the stuff that we have today, I knew about 50 years ago.
Yeah.
Why? Because I saw it on Star Trek. I saw it on Lost in Space. I saw it on Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea.
Mm-hmm.
The first iPad I saw was on 2001: Space Odyssey, filmed in 1967.
Yeah. I didn't even put that together. That's yeah.
Yeah, they're in the Discovery, and they're sitting there looking at tablets, and basically it's an iPad.
I was about to say they're talking to a supercomputer.
Now we haven't got that yet, but we're
damn close.
we're probably getting close to it.
Oh my gosh.
But all the technology, I'll tell people now. I mean, I have friends that are my age. Keep in mind, I'm 62.
I was about to, what year were you born in?
1957.
Okay.
So I'm 60. In fact, I'll be 63 in a couple of months. I can't believe I'm hearing myself say that. But I'm watching some of my contemporaries that struggle with technology, and I'm looking at them like, dude, I knew about this. I've been waiting 50 years for this technology.
It's all here.
I knew about it. I knew about it in the 60s. We were just waiting for someone to figure out how to make it work.
Steve Jobs brought the iPad. That's what I was telling you. We had that back in the 60s.
Oh, the guy that invented the cell phone was apparently inspired by, wait for it, Star Trek.
Of course.
Because he saw a communicator. In fact, this is a guy, he worked for Motorola, which is why the first cell phone flipped open.
Of course. Because it was, and it had the pull-out antenna.
Yeah, because it looked, and in fact, I actually had a cell phone. They actually Nokia did make a cell phone that looked exactly like a communicator.
Oh man. So what it sounds like to me is that the imaginations of all these people building these things really, like building these worlds and building these characters and all that kind of stuff, they really changed the perception of what was possible for people.
Oh yeah, yeah, and then they grew up in like Transformers. I played with those when I was a kid.
Absolutely.
Those are toys. In fact, like cartoons then, and there were advertisements for the toys they were making. Mm-hmm. Well, the same guys who played with Transformers grew up and made the movies.
Exactly.
Which were owned by the toy companies. Yeah, which are owned by the toy company.
Well, because how are you supposed to make money if you can't sell retail products to children? Because children are just going to want, and their parents are just going to get it for them.
Yeah, or now you sell it to adults.
Oh,
like I said, the guy who I don't guarantee the guys who make Transformers played with them as kids.
Absolutely.
And so you got the fans of all these shows who grew up and did remakes of the shows and started working on that. I mean, this has been a wonderful ride watching all this stuff happen.
Absolutely.
And being able to be part of it.
As a person that's watched it come this far, where do you think it could possibly go?
Oh, wow. Well, I mean, the sky's the limit. I mean, what I keep seeing happening a little at a time is people are looking at these things that they're seeing in movies and television, and they're figuring out how to actually make it work. And sometimes it works out well, and sometimes it doesn't. Or you have scientists that are looking at this stuff and going, well, if you had enough power, you could make that work.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you could talk about that with clean energy and climate change all day long.
Yeah. Well, okay, like one of the things I noticed, the SpaceX launch that happened a few weeks ago, one of the big gaps between that and science fiction is the fuel source. I mean, you think about a car. Your fuel tank is a small portion of your car.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, now you look at, say, a Saturn V rocket.
Yeah.
Well, you have this 20-story contraption, and that 20-story contraption is 80% fuel tank.
Yeah.
80% fuel tank, 15% engine, and 5% passenger compartment.
Yeah, I think all that is the amount of energy that it requires to get out of the atmosphere.
Right. So now you look at the Millennium Falcon, for example.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, where's the fuel tank? I mean, it's got one.
It has
somewhere.
To.
It has to. But the thing of it is, the fuel tank is smaller than the ship.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, it's got all those ships have some type of energy source with a high enough energy density to be able to propel them from the surface of a planet into outer space and then exceed the speed of light.
Do you think that? Well, okay. Now I'm just throwing stuff out there. Do you think that battery technology could become dense enough in order to harness that much power?
Yes. Maybe not necessarily for space flight, but yeah. I think the fact that you have companies like Tesla that started pushing the envelope and became competitive enough so that other companies have now started to push that envelope.
Yeah, aren't they they're making like an electric Hummer?
Yeah, well, you could electrify anything. I mean, ask your dad, right? He's got an electric Porsche in the garage.
Yeah, he does.
But because here's the thing. Now we're on the cars.
Mm-hmm.
The early cars, electric cars were common. That's what you sold to women.
I mean, isn't that what like Ferdinand Porsche was his original car concept? I believe was an electric car.
Might have been. I don't know.
I think so. But even then, it's always been a possibility.
Oh, sure, sure. I mean, but like I said, electric cars aren't actually new.
No.
It was just that at some point, for whatever reason, whether the oil company pushed it or because people demanded it, um, electric cars were at one point very common, and then someone took gasoline. Someone, I guess, when they figured out gasoline and how to pump more power out of a gasoline engine, and I think I've also heard some to the fact that at least in L.A. in Los Angeles that in some cases the oil companies actually pushed for freeways so
Absolutely.
that someone would build more cars so they could sell their product.
Absolutely. Well, their product was twofold. It was the gasoline that people used as the energy, and the tar that they paved the roads with.
Yeah.
But in terms of just like gasoline from the battery power and stuff like that, I think it was just because you could get so much energy out of gasoline and get it in there quickly.
Of all the fuels, gasoline has an extremely high energy density.
Absolutely.
It's a combination of high energy density and stability.
Yeah. Well,
Because
relative
well,
stability.
think about it. Explosives have a lot of energy density.
True.
But they're not necessarily stable.
Yeah, that's absolutely true.
I mean, with an explosive, it's all or nothing. But with gasoline, it's more controlled. Hey, Henry, can you do me a favor? I don't know if it's possible. Can we pause for a moment? Because I gotta go to the bathroom, and I don't think you want to go with me.
No, I don't.
Hang on a minute.
Here, yeah. All right, we are back.
Okay, so what I was saying is many sci-fi gadgets will work if you have sufficient energy density. Now, we were talking about cars.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think has pushed the internal combustion engine was racing.
Oh, without question, and the war effort as well. Yeah,
well,
World War II specifically.
Well, actually, that too, but Prohibition.
Oh yeah.
That real short NASCAR.
Yeah.
Came out of Prohibition.
Without question.
Because when those guys, I mean, you had those guys running moonshine. We're talking, late 20s up until the mid 50s.
Mm-hmm.
They're running it. Well, of course, they had to soup up their cars to outrun the police. So a weekend comes around, they compete with each other.
Yep. Oh,
and now you got stock car racing.
Yeah.
And then you have the factories getting involved. The Indy 500 factories are getting involved.
Absolutely. I mean, that pushed a lot of stuff on the European front as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, racing for sure.
Yeah. So, so you've developed ways to get more power out of an internal combustion engine, and that found its way into consumer products. Because the factory, I mean, Ford, Chevy, Chrysler, all those companies found out, if your car wins a race on Sunday, your showrooms are full of people on Monday.
Yeah, absolutely. Because people want to have the best thing, and especially with a car. The car is a symbol.
Oh, yeah. Oh, very much so. Very much so. And in fact, in the case of stock car racing, a lot of the rules specified that whatever you ran on the racetrack had to be available for purchase.
That makes sense. Well, because that would benefit the company just as much. Right.
So now you've got cars with all kinds of fins and tabs and fancy wheels because that's what they ran on the racetrack, and it's still prevalent today, but. All that, and what I'm leading up to is this, and this is where electric cars come in. Someone has to develop the product, and it has to be popular enough that people will buy it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it has to be profitable. Now, General Motors had the EV1 in the early 2000s.
Oh wow, I didn't know that.
Yeah. Well, here's what happened. I guess you couldn't buy the thing; you can only lease it because apparently they lost money on every one.
Mm-hmm.
But the people who owned them loved them. But when they decided to end the program, they took all the cars back and destroyed them.
Wow.
Perfectly good cars were all destroyed. But then here comes Elon Musk. Oh, I can do better. So he comes up with Tesla.
Mm-hmm.
Well, then there was also Fisker, but they did hybrids. But here's a guy who's taken an electric car and made it mainstream.
Truly.
And now look what's happening. All the other major manufacturers are making electric cars and making their own mainstream versions.
And Elon Musk has already cornered the market for the most part. I mean, I think he has a deal with Norway where they use their money from oil sales and allow people to subsidize their buying of electric cars. It's one of the things that they do to keep their country green. That they buy electric cars, and one of the major distributors of electric cars is Tesla.
Sure. In fact, they in the U.S. they actually, I don't know if they're still doing it, but I know at some point you could get a rebate if you bought an electric car.
Yeah, I remember something like that. I think it was state to state though. I don't know if it was across the country.
Oh, as an aside, I also understand that Elon Musk has basically made his patents available to anyone who wants them.
That's just smart, in my opinion, in terms of if you want to bring the project. If you want to bring the technology forward, you're gonna have other people challenge you with this same information.
Yeah, and there's a precedent for that. Philips Electronics, and I can't remember the other. There was Philips and another electronics, JVC. They came up with the VCR with the VHS VCR.
Really?
Yes, but they made their patents available, so anyone. That's why. VHS. That's one of the two reasons that VHS video recorders became so popular. Because
was it Betamax or something like that?
Over Betamax.
Yeah.
Betamax was the better format, but VHS was the cheaper one. Because
patents.
If you wanted to build a VHS machine, all you had to do was contact the Philips and JVC, I think that's who it was. Don't quote me on that. You Google it, get the right companies. All you had to do is contact them and say, "Hey, we want to, duplicate your product. Oh, here you go. Here's the plans and specifications." The other reason was that the porn industry picked VHS as the medium for all their stuff, and
sex sells.
It does. It does. And then the internet killed that. So
Well, I mean, still sells though.
Still sells, but the point is that, when you can make money off of technology, great. And then as people make money, then there's incentive to improve the technology. Mm-hmm. So you've got electric cars, you got people who are willing to buy them, and that's going to improve the technology. In fact, one of the things I ran across the other day, now they're doing races, basically Formula One, with electric cars.
I mean, that to me sounds like the logical conclusion, because what you're gonna have to do is, like, just following what you said with the racing model, is that you have to improve performance, because that's gonna get people to buy it. Yeah,
because the two limiting factors with electric cars is, well, the biggest one is energy density. How long does it take to charge a car up? I mean, look, your gas tank is empty. You go to the gas station, 5 minutes, you're back on the road. Yep. The battery electric car dies, hour, 2 hours,
6 hours even if you're not on a fast charger.
If you had an hour to 2 hours. If you have a Tesla, you can supercharge.
And that's if you have the supercharge.
Right. And Tesla controls that.
Well, yeah, that's the one thing that it's a little bit more.
Yeah. Now, if you have the money to build a supercharger in your home, okay. But the point is that then of course there's range. Well, of course, Tesla, you can go over 200 miles.
Yeah.
Even though a lot of
people paying for all those batteries to go that distance too.
Yeah. Even though a lot of people probably in their dailies don't go more than 100 miles a day. Mm-mm. If even that. But the point I'm getting at, the point I'm really driving at, is that the more accepting the public is of electric cars, the more car companies are going to be willing to build them, and the more they build, then they're going to start developing the technology, because then the competition becomes, okay, a Tesla will go 200 miles. I'm going to build an electric car that'll go 300.
Yep, precisely. And then as time goes on, people are going to keep on demanding for more and more performance out of their vehicles.
Exactly. Which is what has happened with the internal combustion engine. I mean, you got cars now running up and down public streets with 700 plus horsepower.
Absolutely, there's no doubt in my mind that like one of those what is it, those V12 engine cars that doesn't come around unless like you have the.
They're not V12s, they're V8s.
Well, the V12s exist too.
This is true, but look. I live on a busy street, and I hear these guys going up and down the street in these Chargers, and you can tell that they've got some power under that hood.
No doubt about it.
Chargers, Mustangs. I mean, in science fiction is the only thing I love. I like hot rods, so I watch a lot of hot rod shows. Mm-hmm. And every show I watch, oh yeah, we're going to build a car with 700 horsepower. I'm like, 700. I just now got. I'm just barely getting over the fact that the car I drive has 250.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, we're going to put more horses.
I'm still tripping over a little 4-cylinder with had 180 horsepower.
Oh yeah. Without
a turbocharger.
Little 4-bangers that can work.
I mean, there are 4-bangers that run around now that could have outran V8s in the 60s.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean,
but
it's a testament to the technology.
Yes.
No question.
I mean, if you build it, they'll buy it. And if you want to buy it, someone will build it for you.
Yeah, especially if you got the money to do it.
Yeah. So, with all these things that we see, and going back to science fiction, if there's a use for it and there's a market for it, someone will build it.
And somebody has to dream it up and to begin with.
Right. And that's one of the things I love about science fiction, is that someone dreams it up. Now, the other thing I like about it is that, for me, it has forced me to look at the world I live in differently. One of the things, and I'm speaking now about current events, I'm looking at what's going on.
Yeah.
And the problem is the normal that a lot of people live in.
Without doubt.
And a lot of these people are living in the past. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to get. I'd rather
bound by the history.
Yeah, they're stuck on it. Oh, that's an aside. Someone pointed out to me that the Confederacy only lasted 4 years.
Yeah, it's not.
Obama's presidency was 8.
Yeah. And the fact that people are still hearkening back to something. Never mind. But yeah, exactly.
Yeah, we're still stuck 400 years in the past. Is what it boils down to.
Yeah, exactly.
But so watching science fiction is like, okay, you can't deal with me because of the color of my skin. What happens when you meet somebody who is not just the color of their skin? They're not even human.
Yeah, like dealing with all kinds of species, like humanoid species, where it's like, dang, we're all life and we're all intelligent life.
Yeah. I mean, what happens when the Vulcans really do land?
Yeah, exactly. The Vulcans or the Romulans or even worse, like
the Klingons.
Yeah. There's so many things that could go wrong if you just don't think critically about what other people want for themselves and their families and their loved ones and things like that.
Yeah.
And you start missing things.
Yeah. So, but anyways, one of the beautiful things about science fiction is that it allows you to be able to face our differences in a non-threatening way.
Absolutely.
Because a lot of people relate to things as it directly impacts them and according to their particular biases. Mm-hmm. Well, science fiction has allowed writers and film and people who do motion pictures and television has allowed them to present those differences in a way that is non-threatening. I mean, you see. All right, one of the famous Star Trek episodes. The two guys from a planet called Charon. It was Frank Gorshin. I forgot the other actor's name. Frank Gorshin played the Riddler on Batman. One guy, they're both the guys have half their faces black, half their faces white. Only difference between them is which side of the face is white and which side is black. And because of those differences, these two guys hated each other. I'm superior because the right side of my face is white. No, I'm superior because the black side of my face is right.
Yeah.
And you look at this fight. Their entire civilization wiped itself out over that, and everyone else is looking at them going, "You look the same to me."
There's no difference in my eyes.
You don't look any different. Then someone points out the difference, and they go, "Oh, well, okay, yeah, I see that, but so what?"
That reminds me of an episode of Rick and Morty. Have you seen the episode with Unity?
Yes, of course I have.
So it's like we're the pointy nippled people. We have pointy nipples, and we're superior than the round nipples. And it's like, well, no, I'm a part of the round nipples, and the round nipples are the superior race over you crazy pointy nippled people. It's like, and then they all just yell at each other, race war, and then they just go on to fight each other.
See, Rick and Morty is one of those examples of what I'm talking about. Those writers are presenting stuff in a way that you look at it and it looks ridiculous, and then you stop and think, well, wait a minute.
Exactly.
He's got a point.
It's like, how silly could this possibly be that we can't look at it from a larger perspective, from a bigger picture?
Yeah, and so that's one of the things I find so painful right now is like, look, guys. In fact, one of my favorite jokes on Facebook as we're talking about all these different disasters is I'm like, one week is because the day there's an alien invasion and all of a sudden you realize A, there's other intelligent life, and B, to these guys you all look alike: black, white, yellow, brown, Christian, Muslim, Japanese, Siamese,
Hindu,
Mexican.
Buddhist.
You're all the same. To this, when the lizard people come out of the ship, you're all the same.
Yep, exactly.
They can't tell you guys. They can't tell us apart. Oh, in fact, cartoonist Ron Cobb did a comic like that, did a drawing like that. I think I still got your Facebook information. I can send you a copy. It's humans in a zoo, and two lizard people are standing outside looking in the cage, and one of them's turned to the other and says, there's a black guy, Chinese guy, white guy, Mexican, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And one alien turns to the other and says, hey, which human are you talking about? They all look the same to me. There's going to be a day when something shows up on this planet, and in their eyes, we're all the same. And all of a sudden, those differences aren't going to matter anymore.
No, they're not.
Well, okay, it won't take aliens. I think what will happen at some point, and I think it's beginning with, frankly, with your generation, is that people, because I'm already seeing it. Taught them to.
Wait, you broke up for a second. Do you mind repeating it?
Oh, I'm saying with you, what I'm seeing with your generation is that they're seeing less of a difference between people unless they've been taught to see the difference by their parents.
Absolutely. No question about it. I think now more than ever with the internet, and I think that might have happened to a certain degree in the 60s, because I think the baby boomer generation noticed that there was a obvious existential threat of a nuclear bomb.
Yeah.
And I think that brought everybody together to like a certain degree, but I think more so now because the interconnectiveness of information.
Yeah. I mean, I absolutely agree with that. That being said, bigotry and prejudice is probably going to want to be one of the last things that actually goes away, because let's face it, people are more comfortable with people that they identify with.
Unfortunately, you're right.
That is an unfortunate reality.
Yes.
So it's going to take a minute for people to realize that in reality there is no difference.
Mm-mm.
But because if you look at where a lot of the really messed up stuff is happening, it's in those areas where people don't have a lot of education. There's a lot of segregation, and there's a whole lot of us and them.
Yep.
As opposed to just us.
And that's what ruins it.
Yeah.
Time and time again.
So you get a guy who looks at you, doesn't see you're not part of us, so you're you, so I don't like you.
Mm-hmm.
But, it is possible for everyone to look at everyone else and see we as opposed to us and them.
Yeah. And the second you start trying to divide things up and identify as one part of group or another part of group, or telling other people that they're the enemy or villain, then you cease to understand the what is truly what it really is that we're all the same.
Yes.
And the most non-cliche, like lame way that is, but like literally just you got to understand that I'm a human. I was a baby once. You're a human. You were a baby once. And we all try to figure this all thing out on the same planet.
Yeah. So that's why I get so much pleasure from science fiction, because, you look on the bridge of their Enterprise, and there's a guy, with pointed ears. There's a guy with a washboard going up his forehead.
Yep.
And, there's a guy, this guy isn't even human. He's a machine.
Yeah, he's just a robot that feels and has to understand his humanity that's not really human.
Yeah, and a guy with this orange guy with gymongous ears, and they're all buddies.
Yeah, and they're all just trying to work together to accomplish missions.
Yeah.
And be diplomatic and do the right thing.
Yeah. So that's where, now we've gone back to prop, and that's where it really gets weird when you walk onto a set and you're seeing all that stuff up close and personal.
Yeah, no doubt about it.
And you sit there and you see all that and you just go, wow, what if it really could be like this?
Yeah, I think that's definitely the appeal of those grandiose ideas of what the future could look like, because it's possible, and you see it in all kinds of mediums. You can see it in manga and anime as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And comic books, especially.
Yeah, that's why. Okay, like now we're gonna go off on a different tangent, but
there's no problem.
Okay, to illustrate one of the things I'm saying, music.
Mm-hmm.
I learned at a very age to be able to listen to anyone's music.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So, which causes me some problems, because, like, someone gets in my car, I'll turn on Gary Newman. And somebody goes, what's that? I can't listen to that. I'm gonna die. I have to listen to,
Nat
I have
King
to
Cole.
listen. Yeah, the OJs. I'm gonna die if I listen to that. And I'm sitting like, I can listen to Nat King Cole. I can listen to Gary Newman. I mean, one of my favorite music genres, Middle Eastern.
Really?
Yes.
Oh man, I'm still practicing my Arabic. I'm practicing the alphabet, but I'm not very good at it.
Oh, I'll tell you something else I like, and a lot of people think I'm weird when I say it. I like bagpipes.
Interesting. Is it the blaring noise or the consistency of the blaring noise?
All of the above. One night I was at work, and what used to happen, I used to stay at my shop, after hours to work on projects.
Mm-hmm.
I got on Spotify, and I just looked for anything that was bagpipes.
Mm.
And I was blasting bagpipes for like 2 or 3 hours.
Interesting. So you really got to experience the music fully.
Yeah. Oh, and the more I listened to, the more I liked. And a lot of people, I can't stand that stuff. I'm like, yeah, but first of all, when you get what the artist is saying, it's like, wow. So, I mean, now, don't get it twisted. I mean, things I don't particularly, I don't particularly, strange enough, I don't particularly like rap.
That's fair. I love it, but I mean, for the same reason, I listen to everything for the very reason is I want to understand where that artist is coming from anyway.
Right. Now, that doesn't mean I hate it. I mean, there are artists that I really like, but that's not my first choice. I don't really like country and western.
Yeah, I can see that. It's a little bit hit or miss for some people. I really like the blues aspect of it, though. There's definitely a real soulful aspect to a lot of it.
But I can listen to it.
Absolutely.
I may not buy it in the store. I may not download it, but if you're playing it, I'm like, okay, go ahead.
Especially with streaming.
Yeah. So so there are things that are not really, I'm not a big fan of, but I'm okay with it because it enhances my enjoyment of what I do like.
Absolutely. Because you have a deeper understanding.
Sure. I mean, in fact, one of the things I dug for, and you'll probably get a laugh out of it. But there's a Levi's commercial, and it's all these people dancing. There's this really weird kind of, I couldn't tell what genre it was. It was a really weird piece that they're playing. But whatever it was, it didn't sound like something that somebody wrote as a jingle. It sounded like this sounds like this was an album, but it's not local. So I went online, I did a Google search, I found the artist.
Interesting.
And I found the album.
And what did you find out?
Well, it's from South Africa. The artist's name Jane. She's from South Africa. I have her album on my phone.
Oh, that's awesome.
Including that piece that's on the commercial.
Oh, wow! So you were able to just find the person's music outright just because you had access to finding it on the internet. See, that reminds me of the story you were just talking about earlier, where you would go to the library just because that was the entertaining part. Is that you were accessing the information.
And I do the same thing with the internet.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's my number one value of having the internet is it's literally having the resources of all the information in the world or that you can obtain in your language at your fingertips.
Yeah. So I tell so I get people that are like, well, I don't know how to do, and I don't know. I'm like, dude, Google it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I'll tell people in a minute. In the age of the internet, ignorance is a choice.
Pretty much.
Because, I mean, look, I buy a new gadget. You know, a lot of nowadays you buy a new gadget. There's no instructions in the box because you go online and get your instructions.
No, yeah, you have to find a PDF or figure it out on your own.
Yeah, but but the manufacturer will have a website. Well, guess what? If you've got some older gadget, you can find the instructions online.
Yep. You just got to do the right digging.
Exactly. And I know, and it just amazes me how many people there are that don't want to do the digging. And for me, the digging is fun.
I think in terms of information, I think this goes with music as well as with just finding and researching stuff anyway. There's some people that are just spoon-fed their information, and then there are other people that seek it out and try to understand it for themselves. Yeah, and that's sad because I think that's part of the problem with our society is how many people that just want to be spoon-fed. Yeah, I don't know if you could solve that though, because part of the reason why the people that are intelligent enough to seek it out is because somebody wants to be spoon-fed. Yeah, but you have to want to seek it out. I mean, and that's just how I am. I don't know entire. Well, part of it was because of the way my parents brought me up. There were some things. My parents tend to be a little overprotective, but at the same time, they also taught me to be independent. Yeah, which was a weird dichotomy.
And I actually still struggle with that a little bit, because there's a part of me that wants to be spoon fed to a certain extent, but then there's a part of me like, no, I'm gonna do that on my own.
Yeah, that go get it. That when you feel the need to go do it for yourself, you got to be capable.
And many times, especially as I get older, that's the part that wins out. I mean, something as simple as food. I'd rather go to the kitchen and cook than go to a restaurant.
Especially now.
Well, yeah. I cook for myself because it's cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean,
100%.
I mean, $8 for burger and fries at Carl's Jr., or $8 or $10, and I got enough ground beef and burger buns to make burgers for a week.
Exactly. Well, and then the other thing is that, all right, well, if you are going to have somebody else cook for you, then it better be worth every penny, which means that you might as well be going to like an expensive restaurant where the person that is cooking has dedicated their whole life to understanding the intricacies of making the best dish.
Yeah, or simpler than that, you go to the restaurant is about the experience.
Absolutely.
It's not always about the food. It's about, I mean, there's some guys I meet with on like every other Saturday, and we go out to breakfast. And the place we go to isn't. I mean, it's a pretty good place. This is a little mom and pop. This is before the Rona. It was a little mom and pop restaurant, but it wasn't about the food. It was about us sitting down together, laughing and talking.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what made the food taste good.
Yeah, is that you enjoyed the experience of who you had it with.
Yeah. So a lot of restaurants are less about the food and more about the experience of sitting in that place, being enjoying the ambiance and being with the person, whatever people you're with, and enjoying their company. Because when you start making it all about the food, then you're going to come away, and this did happen with one group I went with. It was all about the food, and the person we were with was like, hated everything. This is not the way I would do it. This is not the way I would do it. I'm like, why are you here?
Yeah. Absolutely. Oh, man. Well, I really appreciate we're coming up on about an hour and a half right now, but I really appreciate you joining me and having the conversation with me. This has been really, really super fun, and I want to have you come back and do it again.
Yeah, sure. I like to show off every so often.
Yeah, no, and I think that's part of the reason why I enjoy doing this, is because I get to talk to people and other people get to share my conversations, really.
Yeah, well, I've enjoyed it too, because, hey, dude, we spent how many hours sitting in a car?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Talking for long times.
But it's always good. It's always good when you have someone you can actually sit down and have an intelligent conversation with, because that's how you learn. That's how you grow. Absolutely.
So again, I really appreciate it.
Well,
thank you.
So do I. I mean, hey, thank you. Like I said, it was, so now I got to go cook.
Yeah. All right. Well, you enjoy that. Thank you.